Imagine it's 3:58 in the morning. The whole world is asleep. The streets are silent. The birds haven't even started yet. And somewhere in a small apartment, an alarm is about to go off. Not for a doctor, not for a soldier, not for a millionaire, but for a 15-year-old boy named Ethan. And when that alarm rings at 4 a.m., something happens that will completely change the rest of his life. Stay with me, because what this boy discovered in those quiet morning hours is something most adults never figure out in their entire lifetime. Welcome to Motivera Stories, and if this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and drop a like on this video. We tell stories that actually change the way you think. All right, let's get into it. Ethan was not a special kid. He wasn't the smartest in his class. He wasn't the most athletic. He didn't come from a rich family. His dad worked double shifts at a warehouse, and his mom cleaned offices at night just to keep the lights on. Ethan shared a room with his younger brother, slept on a mattress that was a little too small, and wore the same 3 hoodies to school every week. Nobody would have looked at Ethan and said, "That kid is going somewhere." Nobody except Ethan himself. It started on a Tuesday in October. Ethan had stayed up late watching videos online, motivational stuff, interviews with athletes, entrepreneurs, people who had built something from nothing. And one video stopped him cold. It was an interview with a retired Navy SEAL. And the man said something simple but brutal. He said, "The morning is the battlefield, and most people never even show up." Ethan read that line 3 times. He sat in the dark of his room, his brother snoring beside him, and he felt something shift inside his chest. He didn't fully understand it yet, but something had just woken up in him. That night, he set his alarm for 4 a.m. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't post about it. He just set the alarm and went to sleep. And when it went off at 4 in the morning, the room was pitch black. It was cold. His body screamed at him to turn it off and go back to sleep. Every single instinct he had told him to quit. But Ethan sat up. He put his feet on the floor, and he just sat there for a second in the dark, breathing. Then he stood up, grabbed his hoodie, and went to the kitchen table. He didn't have a plan. He didn't know exactly what to do with that hour. So he just started. He opened a notebook, an old one he'd barely used from school, and he wrote at the top of the first page, "What do I actually want?" And then he sat there and he wrote. For the first time in his life, with no distractions, no phone notifications, no noise, just silence and a pen, he wrote honestly about who he was and who he wanted to become. He wrote about wanting to get out of that apartment. He wrote about wanting to stop feeling invisible at school. He wrote about wanting to be someone his little brother could look up to. He filled 3 pages that morning. Then he went back to bed for an hour before school, and something felt different. He couldn't explain it, but he felt like he had done something real. The next morning, 4 a.m. again. This time, along with the journal, he did 20 push-ups. That was it, just 20. They were ugly, shaky push-ups, but he did them. The morning after that, he read 5 pages of a book he had borrowed from the library, a biography of a man who had built a company from his garage. And slowly, day by day, Ethan began building something. Not a business, not a product. He was building himself. 2 weeks in, he almost quit. It was a Friday. He'd had a terrible week at school. A teacher had called him out in front of the class for a wrong answer, and everyone laughed. And he came home exhausted and humiliated. He set the alarm for Saturday morning, but when it rang at 4, he turned it off. He lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. And then he thought about something he had written in his notebook a few days earlier. He had written, "The days you least want to show up are the days that matter most." He had copied it from somewhere, but now it was hitting different. He got up. He went to the kitchen table. He sat down and wrote for 45 minutes, mostly just processing the pain of that week, getting it out of his head and onto the page. And when he was done, he felt lighter. He had turned a bad day into fuel. By the time 3 months had passed, Ethan had changed. Not in a flashy way. Nobody at school noticed right away. But inside, something was different. He was calmer. He was more focused in class. He started raising his hand more. He started finishing his homework before dinner instead of scrambling in the morning. He had read 6 books. He had filled 2 journals. He had started doing a real workout routine every morning, not because some app told him to, but because he had discovered that when his body felt strong, his mind felt strong too. He had found that the morning hours, those quiet dark hours before the world woke up, were his. Nobody could take them. Nobody could interrupt them. That was his time. His dad noticed first. One Saturday morning, his dad came home from a night shift and found Ethan at the kitchen table, reading. His dad stood in the doorway for a moment, still in his work jacket, looking at his son. And then he said, "What are you doing up?" And Ethan looked up and said, "I've been up since 4." His dad didn't say anything for a second. Then he pulled up a chair and sat down across from Ethan and asked, "What are you reading?" And for the next 30 minutes, before his dad went to sleep and before the rest of the family woke up, they just talked. It was one of the realest conversations they'd ever had. Ethan told his dad about the notebooks, about the morning routine, about the books, and his dad listened. And at the end, his dad put his hand on Ethan's shoulder and said, "Keep going." 2 words, but they landed like a boulder dot by the end of the school year. Ethan's grades had gone from average to among the best in his class. Not because he was suddenly smarter, but because he was showing up differently. He was prepared. He was rested in his mind even when his body was tired. He had clarity that other kids didn't have, because other kids were still half asleep scrolling their phones while Ethan had already been awake. For 2 hours working on himself, his English teacher pulled him aside one day and said, "I don't know what changed for you this year, but whatever it is, don't stop." Here's what Ethan learned, and this is the part I really want you to hear. Because this isn't just a story about a teenager. This is about something that applies to every single one of us. Ethan learned that discipline is not punishment. Most people think discipline is hard and painful and something you force on yourself. But Ethan discovered that real discipline is actually a gift you give yourself. Every morning he woke up at 4 a.m. He was telling himself something powerful. He was saying, "I believe in what I'm building. I believe my future is worth sacrificing my comfort for today. And over time, that belief became his identity. He stopped being the kid who was just getting by. He became the kid who was intentional, the kid who had a direction. He also learned something about time that most people miss. Everybody says they don't have enough time. Ethan had the same 24 hours as everyone else. Same school schedule, same family situation, same limited resources. But by protecting those early morning hours, he effectively added a meaningful, productive chunk of time to his day that was completely free from distraction and interruption. He wasn't taking time away from sleep. He was going to bed earlier, cutting out the late-night scrolling, making real trades. He understood that time is not found. Time is made. And the people who get the most out of life are the ones who make time, not the ones who wait for it to appear. A year after that first 4 a.m. morning, Ethan applied for a competitive summer program at a university 2 states away, a program for students interested in business and entrepreneurship. It was selective. Most applicants were from private schools or had connections. Ethan had neither, but his application essay was about discipline and early mornings, and what he had learned about himself in the silence before sunrise, and he got in. The acceptance letter came on a Wednesday afternoon, and Ethan read it standing in the kitchen. And then he sat down and wrote about it in his journal, just like he had written about everything else that year. He didn't scream or post it everywhere. He just wrote, "It's working. Now here's what I want to leave you with. And this is important. You don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. That's not the real lesson here. The real lesson is about intention." Ethan didn't just set an alarm. He made a decision about who he was going to be. He decided that his future mattered more than his comfort in that moment. He decided that he was going to show up for himself before the world had a chance to demand anything from him. That decision, made over and over again every single morning, built him into someone different, into someone stronger. And that's available to every single person watching this right now. No matter where you are, no matter what your situation looks like. The question is not whether you have the ability. You do not. The question is whether you believe your future is worth waking up for. Whether you're willing to sit in the quiet and do the work when nobody's watching and nobody's clapping. That's the real test. And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't have to start at 4 a.m. It can start right now. It can start with one decision, one page, one push-up, one honest conversation with yourself about what you actually want. This is Motivera Stories. And we believe that every person has a story worth living, and that story starts with a single choice to show up. If Ethan's story hit you, if it made you think about your own mornings, your own routines, your own potential, drop a comment below and tell me, what's one thing you're going to do differently starting tomorrow? I read every single comment. And I want to hear from you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, a friend, a younger sibling, someone going through a hard time, share this video with them right now. One share could be the 4 a.m. alarm. That changes someone's life. Thank you for watching. Stay intentional. And we'll see you in the next one.